So, Harish, can I? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here,
So,
madam.
when I want to share my presentation, what do I? I don't accept
Yeah, madam.
share
Now,
option here.
now we are presenting a slide of introduction. Then
Okay.
from our end, we will start presenting. Soon after
So
giving your introduction,
you will
we'll
have to
start.
give me access to share screen.
No, madam. You just start presenting from your end.
Yeah, but if I want to show a slide, there has to be an option of sharing the slide.
Yes, madam. What you have to do is you just start presenting.
Huh.
Then you minimize that screen.
Yeah.
You're saying sharing will happen on its own. Can we try it once if it's
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
yeah, sure, sure.
I feel a little okay.
Now we have stopped
Wait,
presenting.
hold on.
Okay. Now you
Okay.
can start presenting from your end. Start
Okay.
presenting. Start presenting.
Can you see my slides?
Not yet. You need to start presenting. Present now.
Yeah, I have started.
Present now? No.
My slides you are able to see?
No, madam.
You won't be. Till you give me access to share screen, it will not happen.
Now.
Present now. Okay,
Yes,
wait.
yes.
Now
Yeah,
I
you
think
go.
you're giving me access now.
Yeah, you go there now.
Okay, now cancel. I don't share your entire screen. No, I'm not getting my presentation. Wait a minute. I'm not able to see the. No.
Madam, there is a tab called
Okay,
present.
fine. Now, yes, okay, fine.
Press that. Present now.
Yeah, then it's fine. What happens to my video? There's also a video I want to show. I don't see it here. But anyway, okay. I just hope you're able to see the video when it comes.
Yes, yes, madam. Now you are presenting.
Okay,
I can able to see your presentation.
okay.
Madam, could you please stop presenting for a minute? We'll
Okay.
provide your introduction.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, madam. Thank you. A very good afternoon, everyone. I, I extend my warm welcome to all of you for session 7 on leadership presence and decision making. This particular session will be delivered by Dr. Angela Guptu, Professor, Department of Management Studies, Chairperson, Center for Society and Policy, Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru. I heartily welcome Professor Angela Guptu on behalf of Government Polytechnic Ratnagiri and on behalf of all the participants. Before we proceed further, I would like to present a brief introduction about Professor Angela Guptu. Madam has pursued her master's degree in psychology from University of Delhi and doctoral degree from Indian Institute of Management. She has received many awards. Some of them are Chevening Rolls-Royce Science and Innovation Leadership Fellowship, British High Commission, United Kingdom. Emerald IIM South Asia Management Research Fund Award in the year 2013. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru National Award 2010-12, Outstanding Contribution in the Field of Public Policy and Social Science by the government. Social Science Research Award 2009 by the International Development Research Center, Canada. Recent expert membership committees she served are empaneled external expert, member of the Senate, NIT Surathkal, Karnataka, India. Jury member, 10th edition of Aegis Graham Bell Awards for Tech Innovations, Aegis School of Data Science, with support of NITI Aayog, Government of India. Advisory Board, Amway Global Entrepreneurship Report, Empaneled expert member, Rajasthan Public Service Commission, Government of Rajasthan. Empaneled expert member, Empanelment Committee of Karnataka Evaluation Authority, KEA, Government of Karnataka. Expert member, Professional Technical Advisory Committee, Municipal Data Society, KMDS, Government of Karnataka. Advisory Board, Corporate Reduced Initiative, Green Step India Private Limited, India. Member, International Advisory Board, Cluster for Research on the Informal Sector and Policy, CRISP, University of Sheffield, United Kingdom. Recent journal publications are, she has published more than 60 publications in the areas of environmental sustainability, developmental dynamics, intellectual property, urban systems, informal economy, micro enterprises, social enterprise, human entrepreneurs, infrastructure, public systems, data economics and security, smart cities, transportation. In rural sector, socio-administrative dynamics, citizenship, ownership, empowerment, decentralization. I once again welcome you, madam, on behalf of my institution, Government Polytechnic Assembly, and on behalf of all the participants. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you so much, Harisha. So I should say good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this presentation. So before I start, just a quick putting a few facts in front of everyone. So when this offer came, when Harish said that if we could do something on leadership and decision making, so I gave it a huge thought. I was wondering, he also told me the kind of people that I'm going to talk to. And looking at all of this, I really wondered, what is it that I should present, right? You've already anyway had a lot of talks. As I see, you had a talk on leadership and excellence, vision. You've looked at professional excellence, the power tools of leadership, culture, behavioral qualities of a leader, and all of these discussions, I guess you've already had. So I was just thinking of what is it that I present to a group which has already gone through a lot of talks on leadership. Plus, it is also a group which is very diverse. Right? While we have some people who are on the steps of leadership, and there are people who are already sitting in leadership positions. So in that sense, there's a diversity of current leaders as well as future leaders that I will be addressing. And of course, the third thing also that came to my mind was that, leadership is actually a process. It's not as if once you're on the seat, suddenly, you change or you start looking at things differently. The whole process of reaching that position or that chair that gets you there is also actually it's a process. The leadership actually starts from much earlier than when you're actually sitting on a seat, which is seen as the chair of leadership. So given all of that, I was just, so I thought, why not look at just one aspect of leadership, that is perspective taking. So decision making is a huge field actually, and within that, today what I will do, I'll take you through some tools of how to take a perspective. If you're facing a situation, if there is a problem or a situation or any event that is going on, how, as a leader, how is it that you analyze that situation? So I'm going to talk about 5 tools which I frankly find very, very effective. And so I'll start with my presentation, maybe put some few things on the slide. And okay, this is not the one. Okay. So here we go. So are you able to see my slide?
Yes, madam, perfect.
So what I'm going to talk about is how to deal with this world called the VUCA world. Possibly all of you would have heard of this word, VUCA, VUCA. The world is talking about it. It's already there since a few years. So what I'm going to discuss is basically on what tools that can be effective for a leader in this particular scenario. Now, to tell you upfront, I have few slides to present. And this session, therefore, if you has to be interactional. So I'm going to put some questions, and please don't hesitate to stop me anytime during the presentation. If you have any doubt, any queries, let's keep it as discussion oriented and interactional as possible. Because as I said, I don't have very huge amount of slides to present, a lot of text to present. I'm hoping that we'll have a lot of discussion. So just to put the perspective there as to what do you mean by VUCA, we're talking about basically four situations that all of us actually feel now. And the world has changed so much since the last 10, 15 years. And of course, technology has taken the lead in changing that. Right? And so some of the changes that are, one is of course the volatility that has come in the whole context. The stability is no longer there. The whole context and conditions are changing rapidly. For example, if you need to put disciplining strategies for students, right? Those days are gone where now you have to think of innovative ways to look at, if you want students to attend class or demonstrate a certain behavior, how is it that you need to go about it? Right? You have the whole, because you see that there are CCTVs and so many other gadgets that have come to sort of see what is happening at the behavioral level. Parental involvement has changed, right? They look at the whole concept of education very differently now. Whereas the whole thing of career versus learning, these are some of the changes that are coming in, which change all of this concept of discipline, involvement, etc. So one of this is one of the contexts that we are facing currently. Right? The second U stands for uncertainty, which is lack of predictability, the element of surprise. Right? And I again put the same thing of behavior of students itself, right? When we're dealing with so many students, or when we're dealing with employees, students, or people, even in family situations, right? With so much of social media, so much of global information coming in, you really can't predict how people will behave or what people will do, what situation will lead to what kind of a result, or how will the whole thing get interpreted, situations will get interpreted. There's really a lot of unpredictability in the response that you may receive as a leader if you're taking a certain decision. A stands for ambiguity. I said there are multiple interpretations to the same context. And you cannot, in that sense, say that the way I see it is the right way. Right? Those times are gone where things are really simplistic. Now there are multiple interpretations of the same context, each one is right. And for the leader, therefore, they have to see all the perspectives together and then take a decision, hoping that this is the most optimal. There is no perfect decision. There is no very straight line to this will lead cause and effect and things. They don't exist. Right? Those situations are not there anymore. Similar is complexity, the fact that things are highly interconnected. The student, the child, the teacher, and the management, all of them in their behavior, each one is actually feeding into the other to demonstrate a certain kind of action. So in that sense, so this is what actually VUCA stands for. We are talking of a situation where there's unpredictability, there's rapid change, there's ambiguity in what is happening, and there's complexity. I'm not saying it didn't happen earlier, it was there. But because of several things, one being, of course, technology, the other is the globalization that has taken place where the priorities have changed. Teaching priorities, parental priorities, child priorities, the economic priorities, in the sense the national priorities, all of these have changed so much, and they are constantly changing because we're still riding the technology wave. It's not yet over, right? A simple example is, I remember when I was in college, television had come when I was in college. Now my daughter, elder one, is in college, and TV is already a use of technology which is no longer active. I have not had television in my house since 1.5 years because you have so many other gadgets and everybody is actually operating through that. The television has already become defunct. And we are still riding that with new technologies that are coming in. So in that sense, given all of that, is what this VUCA world actually represents. So now coming to what are we going to do in this session? So we want to look at, is there a way to sort of actually thrive in this? Surviving, yes, all of us are trying to survive, but is it a way to thrive in this world? right? As a leader, can I take all of this together and actually come out on top? Right? Deal with volatility, ambiguity, all of these situations and still be able to come out on top with the best decisions where people actually appreciate the decisions that I take. So then coming to the 5 tools of that I'm going to talk about, right? So I'm starting with the first one. So now I'm going to open this discussion for everyone. Please, as I said, it has to be interactional, and you'll keep getting these kind of questions where I'll stop and I'll request you to sort of participate. So what do you see? This is for the participant. I put a picture in front. Can you tell me what you see?
Ocean, ma'am. Ocean.
Okay.
Ocean.
Okay. You see an ocean. Very true. Correct. Anybody else?
Stormy.
Mountain, ma'am.
Correct. Correct. They are mountains. Yeah, that's true. What else?
Mist.
The blue whale?
Stormy. It's quite stormy, ma'am.
Pardon?
Stormy. Stormy. It's quite stormy.
Yeah, that is the mist.
So you do see mist, yeah, you see mountains. You know, there's water, there's mist, there are mountains, correct? So, okay, so now my second question for everyone, right? So actually, please feel free to say there are no right or wrong answers. Nothing wrong or right here. It's just, you know, it's a simple thing. So you please don't hesitate to see what you are feel. So now the question is, if you were piloting a boat, right, how will you pilot a boat? So you're right, there are mountains, you can see mist, you can see water, and it's decently misty. So if I was to ask you, how will you pilot your boat? Can you think of some way, some strategy to go about it?
Just move on to the opposite direction.
Okay, yeah, true. So you start moving to either the left or the right, to see if there is a way. Correct, correct. Anything else? Any other way? Anybody? Can you think of some way to? Okay, so anybody who can tell me, if you had a boat there, slides not visible. Sorry. Okay. Are they visible now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So okay. So if I was to ask you how, someone said correctly that you will want to move. So you can see a mountain right in front. So obviously you would like to move your boat to one side to see if there's a path there. That's one way to go. Yes. Anybody else?
Otherwise, take a risk to move on, ma'am. Take a risk. Take a risk.
Correct, correct. The other is to take a risk and move on. What if there actually is a path? You do tend to see a small bit of gap between two mountains. What if there is a path? And so you kind of move forward and see what. Excellent. Yeah, that's very true. What else? What about turning back? Do you think that is also a solution? That
Sure.
right? Possibly, right? So basically, what I'm talking about here, the first tool that is there, saying go beyond the obvious, right? So we looked at these mountains, we looked at the mist, we realized that it's misty at the time, and then if we were to pilot a boat, there are things that we will look at the obvious, right? If you don't sort of maneuver right now, think, strategize, do something, you're going to dash into one of the mountains, right? So but here, so now the point is, when I go beyond the obvious, my decision becomes a little more sharper in mind. The fact is, what if if I go a little beyond in trying to first figure out what else is there? It's possible that I'll encounter that actually there's a huge set of mountain ranges beyond that, and boat actually cannot move forward. There is just no way, there is no path. Right? If I would strategize one more step, saying that before I decide on my strategy, I want to know what else is there beyond this picture that I'm showing, sir. Okay, beyond this picture. Right? So that is what I mean when I say go beyond the obvious. Let me see if I can move this here. Okay. Okay. Sorry. It's okay here. Or I could see something else as well. What if I end up actually seeing that beyond the mist, there is nothing scary and there's actually a very, very clear path to moving forward? It could be either ways, right? So the point is that when I go beyond the obvious, things become a little more clear as to what is in front of me, right? Okay, let me try this. So when I'm saying going beyond the obvious, I'm saying, yes, you have to look at the situation at the face value. For example, now if I take example of an employee or a junior coming and complaining about someone who has shouted and screamed at that person, right? And this person who has shouted and screamed is known to have a bad temper. So an obvious thing is when you know that this person has a bad temper and he has shouted, you would always, that situation at the face value is there. You cannot deny that. But the idea is to look for one more step and see, is there a pattern? Is it that this person shouts and screams because or gets angry in a certain context or in a certain behavioral context or a situational context? And in that sense, is there a history? Is there a contributing factor? A certain environment that is actually leading to it? A typical example of situation as face value would be that I would strongly react to that person, right? And say, no, it's not done. This is you repeatedly behaving like this, and therefore you should be punished. That's a very technical and good way of dealing with it. Sometimes you have to do it. But leadership has to go one step beyond because that person is also your colleague, your junior, your employee. He's also part of the system. And you are sitting in a situation which gives you that leadership position to actually include everybody. So in that sense, you have to look for have one more step before you decide to do one more step of clarity is what saying go beyond the obvious means, right? Of course, time is required for that and it may cause delays. And therefore, in that sense, you have to figure out how much of information is enough information and then take a decision. But but the point here is to say that you have to understand the situation at face value and go one more step ahead to look for some pattern that may be there, some contributing factor, history or ambiguity. That is the mark of a leader. That they are able to go to one step to rectify the situation, not just punish, but also see that there is a way to deal with not having the situation once more. Okay, so that actually, so this was the situation. We'll come back to it again. As I said, if an employee complains about shouting by an individual who is known to have a temper, it's basically an example of workplace harassment. So technically, you have to take a decision on this very fast as a leader. But the leadership demands one more step, I said. Not just take an action on this workplace harassment legally because it's a paralegal situation, but also go beyond to understand why of it, the pattern. Okay. Then, okay. Is there any questions here? So then I'm going to go to the second one. Second tool that is called zoom in and zoom out. I don't know how if you have heard about this particular thing. I'm going to show you a short film. I hope it runs fine. I'll just go to the next. It's a Harvard Business Review. I'll stop sharing this and I'll share the other screen now. It's a small 10-minute film. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I think I'll start the movie and film, and then most probably it will come. I'm not able to see the same. Okay, most probably now I'll get it. Okay, this is the one. I hope. So I'll start this. So just bear with me, because I think what I understand is that the voice will go fine, but there'll be a delay in the visual. When the professor is speaking, there'll be a bit of a delay, but the voice will be fine, right? If there's a problem in the dialogues, then you please get back to me.
Ma'am, poor audio, ma'am.
The audio is not clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
No, madam, very poor audio.
So my audio here is pretty, it's on 100. It's, I have put it on maximum. Can you check from your end? I had adjusted my audio to 100. I'll also remove my microphone, but here the noise would be higher. Actually, it's raining here, so if I remove this headphone, then you will have the rain sound very strong. So I'll again start. Please check your audios from your end. Yes.
Madam,
Yes.
Harish here. Madam, just remove the headphone.
Yeah, I think I'll
Just
do
remove the
that. So my only worry is.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it helping?
Not much, madam. Actually, it's totally not audible.
I'll start again.
Madam,
No, madam, it is not audible.
madam,
Yes.
it looks like you have muted your mic. Audio.
Okay. I haven't. Okay, I'll just check. I'll restart. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you, madam.
Okay. Now I'm starting it again. Can you please?
No, madam, no voice.
Okay, so when I had checked it, recently they were able to hear it very clearly. So give me one more. I think I know what is really wrong. Just.
I think this platform does not support this feature, I think, ma'am.
No, it will. It will.
That is the
I
issue.
have tried it. I just tried it in the morning again. So it will. Wait, I'll keep it. I've tried it in the morning. Is it helping now?
No, ma'am. Same as it was earlier.
Is this with everybody or just with one? Can you please, everyone, just tell me, because it worked with my setup.
Ma'am, you just share the link, ma'am.
Should I send the link?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see the link? I'll go via the link and see if I can go online straight. Okay. Okay, please see now.
Madam,
I'll
have
share
you?
the screen. I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it working now?
Audio is playing. I mean, video is playing, but no audio.
Why is this not happening?
Article, zoom
Now?
in, zoom out in our market.
Yeah.
My pleasure. So you've defined a critical new skill for business leaders, the ability to zoom in and zoom out effectively. Tell us what you mean by that.
This is another way of thinking about strategic thinking, but that strategic thinking has to be flexible. It has to work at several levels. You have to be able to stand back to see the context, the big picture, while moving in to see some details, but make sure that flexibly you're moving across the spectrum. I love the zoom button on cameras, on my phone, on photos, and I thought that's really a perfect metaphor. I'm always playing with it. I'm saying, what's in the background and how can I see that? But also, how can I find the one area that looks like it might be a point for action? And I realized that we need that flexible, dynamic capability in order to think strategically and move the action along in any organization or in our lives.
So are there certain situations in which it's really important to be either zoomed in or zoomed out, situations that we can start to recognize? Or is it that basically any scenario or any decision can really benefit from both perspectives?
Well, I think there should be some flexible looking at both ends of the spectrum in any situation. I'm not sure that there is that much virtue to staying close in and close to the details. In fact, there are a lot of problems that occur if you're too close in. First of all, you see yourself too big, reflected back. So the people that zoom in and get stuck there tend to personalize things. They tend to begin to look at the ways in which they're being treated. They don't see the context. They don't see alternatives. And they also can't put things in a time perspective to move across time to see what they're really trying to achieve. So I really don't see too many virtues there. On the other hand, that is a realm in which some people operate by personal relationships, trading of favors, and so forth. Zooming out, I think that's a place where the virtues of staying with the big picture really, particularly difficult for troubled times, where you need to take action, but there are so many things that happen that appear to be either a personal attack or a glitch or a problem. You know, I have my famous Cantor's law, everything can look like a failure in the middle. But when you zoom out, when you're able to zoom out, you always find the principles, the underlying principles, the enduring truths, what's truly the goal, the strategy. Now, of course, if you just stay stuck there, that's also a problem because you might not see a new emerging phenomenon. So you've got to keep going back to look at the details from time to time. But I think standing back to see the big picture is good for all of us.
So is it right to say that it's not enough to to have this work at an organizational level or at a team level, so that some people are responsible for thinking about the big picture while other people take care of the details.
I think what happens then if people aren't always flexible and able to understand one another, they talk past each other. So we've all been in meetings like that, where there's one person who immediately wants to generalize, make it abstract, and doesn't really pay attention to what the particular situation is. There are other people at the zoom in or the close in side who immediately start talking only about details. They start telling stories, they have personal anecdotes, and they never get the strategy. So they're talking past one another. So I think we do have to encourage people to have both capabilities. But I think we can also encourage leaders in those meetings to say, well, let's zoom in and look at some of the details, but now let's zoom out and let's see the big picture. Let's put those together. Let's see what else is in the neighborhood. Let's look at alternatives. And that can really help. So I don't think you can balance it. I think you really need to have people learn how to do both things.
And so I think most of us tend to think of ourselves as more big picture people or more detail oriented people. What can we do to learn to be better at that process of zooming in and zooming out?
So the close-in people, I'll start with the close-in people, because this close-in, again, means taking it too personally, trying to work through personal relationships. If there's a new opportunity, a close-in person is going to say, who do I know? And start looking at their own network. So they would need to be encouraged to think of this as a more general task, which is, how do I find the people that might be helpful, not who do I know? So you can begin some mental tricks that help you do that. And if you're looking at communications and saying, gee, I'm left out, or I'm insulted, there's again a mental trick where you say, I'm not going to get insulted, I'm not going to get upset. I, or the person doing it, are first going to ask, what's at stake here? Why is this happening? And if you ask, why is this happening? If you ask why questions all the time, then it's a lot easier to be able to stand back and put it in perspective. It's very therapeutic because people who submit too much and close in are often people who may have clear talent skills, but they're mind-based approach. This is why we need to make this capability so important. Strategic. If as a leader need to be able to raise the big picture, the strategic picture, but also the details of the information. We never said that it was easy. So it does take talented people to juggle set up something and to sort of to just put it into some rich and say, what's the goal? What are the principles? What's the challenge? What else is the need? And so when you have the combination of these so also too many details from the data so let's specific destination exactly what's around
Okay, so I've stopped the presentation. I understand people are just not able to hear this. So whereas if I am able to hear it here, stop sharing. Okay. This is really. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
But you were not able to hear the audio at all.
Yes.
This is really,
For
I
the
was
video,
able to
audio
hear
was
it. I
not
have
there,
tried
ma'am.
it out today morning with my students sitting in other places on Zoom, and they were able to hear it. So I'm really surprised how it's not working here. Maybe large meetings versus small meeting would have made a difference. I can't see any other reason. So it's really okay. It's really unfortunate, but anyway, let me just go back to
Yes.
the presentation then, and I'll try and sort of give a gist of what we were talking about. Let me get the presentation going. Presentation is not coming back again. Right here. Okay. Okay, here. Okay, sorry guys. I think it was just unfortunate. Can you hear me at least?
Yes, madam. No problem.
Okay, fine. So let's move ahead. I think it's really unfortunate that you couldn't see it. It's a very, very nice video. This is the link. Can you see the link? Can people see the link to this?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fine. So this is the link. I would really suggest everybody, I'll request everyone to see this video. It is talking of 2 or 3 things. The first thing it says is that all of us are tuned to look at a situation in one way. It is either we end up zooming in a situation, looking at too many of the details and getting lost in the details, versus there are people who are capable of looking at the larger picture, and in that sense they miss out the details. So the professor gives the and 2 basically examples. She talks about the camera, how there are times when you want to zoom in your camera, and there are times when you zoom your camera out. And she also gives the example of when you're in Google, when you're searching for something, right? Especially Google Maps. And if you're going to a place and you want to know what is around that place, then you end up zooming in, right? You go to that place, look at what are the restaurants around it, which are the stations, where are the trains, where are the bus stations, etc. And then you also end up zooming out to understand, so are there alternate routes to go to that place, for example, right? So when we are using Google Maps, we do tend to sort of zoom in and zoom out. And she's saying that individuals are also the same. Typically, we do tend to have this thing of zooming in a situation or zooming out. Going to the next, to just give you, okay. So basically, she says that people who have the habit of zooming in or looking at the smaller picture or looking at the details, they end up losing out on the larger perspective. So they tend to then personalize things, right? The focus becomes more on I. How am I affected? They are not able to see alternatives. They are not able to see context, and so they are also not able to put things in the time context, and things become very personalized when you have a zoom in approach to looking at situations, right? So the professor further says that then what happens is then you start looking for people you know, right? Who are the people? If I'm facing a situation, how do I deal with it? You start trading on relationships. Then you start looking for people you know who can help out, and those kind of activities starting. And oftentimes, when you have a zoom in approach to events, you also see things more as a personal attack, right? When you feel as if it's a personal situation and you all start looking at how am I affected in the whole situation, right? So the zoomed out is the other perspective. Let me see if I've put that. I didn't because, okay. The zoom out is the other perspective where you end up looking at the larger picture, but you're not able to take effective action because you're missing out on the details of it. Okay? You're missing out on what are the deviations that are there. Is there anything in the situation itself that will help me solve the problem? Because you have started looking at a larger picture. So let's just take the example of the situation where an employee comes or a junior comes saying somebody else has shouted at him, to the extent that it amounts to workplace harassment. Right? So the zoomed in situation, I said, would be, I should actually open, so zoomed in situation would be here that you look at it in a very narrow perspective and you say, okay, fine, there is this action that has to be taking place. There's this workplace harassment, it is a paralegal situation and I need to sort of dissuade it. So therefore, most probably the person who shouted at has not followed workplace norms and therefore should be punished. The zoomed out perspective would be that this is also a warning to a lot of people, right? I would look at it, the larger picture would be that this kind of a behavior is unacceptable, but all employees are important. So if I was to actually use this more as a case to demonstrate that this is unacceptable rather than as a punishment to somebody, right? That would be then leadership, where I would have zoomed in and I would have zoomed out as well. Right? And that is what she is talking about in this video. And so further, of course, she says that we all of us have one particular perspective, which is either we tend to think of ourselves as better at zooming in and looking at more details, being methodical, being systematic, or we are more zoomed up where we have larger vision, we are able to visualize larger things, we can actually draw up goals, strategize, put a vision to the situation. And when she was asked as to do you think that it is something that you can actually have both perspectives, the professor said that no, you have to learn it. Because you would have a personal style and you have to learn the other one then. Okay? So coming to, therefore, what are the questions to ask, right? If you sort of assess yourself, what kind of a person, which typically do you prefer? Are you a very zoomed in person where you end up getting lost in detail and start looking at everything in a very personal context and start looking at people, you know, how to solve it from within this? Or you have a zoomed in perspective where you are looking at, you look at the larger picture all the time, and in that sense, you end up missing on the details and solutions that may have come out, or you may end up hurting sentiments when you have a larger zoomed out perspective. And some of the questions that you can ask, therefore, are these. Right? If you feel that are you stuck in a perspective which is very too closed in, so some of the questions that you can ask to zoom out is, what matters most? Does it really, I mean, is it a personalized, instead of taking it personalized, you ask, what matters most, right? What is the context? What is the larger purpose of the action that I have to take as a leader? So what is the mission? What are the circumstances? What if the circumstances reoccur? Am I taking a stand or an action which will ensure that the circumstances don't reoccur, right? And does it fit within the goal of what I want? So do I want all employees, there's a lot of discontent and I want happiness? Or do I want to send a message that, hey, this is unacceptable, right? So if I want to, if I'm, so for example, sitting in a chair, when I realize that a lot of, as a leader, a lot of my employees or people who are working with me have very high discontent, then I may not use punishment as, right? I would zoom out and say, hey, this is not a very personalized situation. This is actually what is happening within the organization. It is a reflective of a much larger problem. So let me not do the punishment, but rather talk to this person and figure out what triggers this kind of. So let me remove the circumstance itself so that this behavior does not come. And whereas if I want to sort of put a message saying that, no, this kind of a behavior of workplace harassment is not acceptable, then I will do the punishment part, right? Where I will take the person to task. So these are some of the, if you're stuck in one perspective, these are some of the questions you can ask to have a larger understanding as a leader. Similarly is the other way around, right? So if you are more a visionary where you can see the larger perspective, where you could strategize well, you have these longer plans. Sometimes you'll realize these plans are also not working because they don't move as fast as your mind and your vision is moving. That is when you have to ask some of the other questions, which is, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I audible? Yeah, okay, fine.
Yes.
So I'm just checking because I don't know how it's working. So the other thing is, pardon?
Please go for the slideshow, madam.
No, I'm not going for slideshow because I want to see what is happening towards. I'll do it, but it doesn't help me talk to you.
Oh, okay, no problem.
All these problems that we are facing, right? This gives me an idea of who's around. If there's conversation happening, then that gives me an idea to see that.
That's fine.
That is why I'm not doing this. But okay, but can you read what is written on the slide? Or that's also not visible.
We can read titles, madam.
Oh, okay, fine. Here then. So maybe this will help read better.
Okay,
Right?
thank you.
I'm looking at the other side. If I'm really too far out where I have a vision and I can look at it, but I'm not able to see the other picture. Then the questions, what are the basic telltale signs, right? So that is when I will sort of ask a different kind of questions. Do I have sufficient information to proceed? Have I taken everybody's perspective? Have I talked to everyone before I'm drawing up this vision or drawing up this plan to move forward? Right? And is there any other action that actually can be taken? Right? Is there any other particular way to solve what I'm thinking? Right? So I think this is the way to go. This is my vision. But are there other ways? Do I talk to people? Right? And figure that out. And are there any other roads, other ways to do it? How is this affecting the person who are helping me carry this vision forward? So these are some of the questions that I have to ask if I am not if I am too far out as a perspective and I'm not closed in. So this is what is the second tool that we were talking of, where, okay. So the second tool, therefore, after go beyond the obvious, is to have a perspective of zooming in and zooming out, like you see it in your cameras or when you have it in your phones, right? And then all situations need to have that assessment before you are able to before you are able to see things clearly and therefore take an optimal decision. The third thing, therefore, the third tool is also, we had also talked about it when we were talking about what VUCA means, is using the multiple perspectives. Okay. So, for example, in this picture, see, I'm sure you've heard this very often, right? What you see depends upon who you are or where you are. There's several examples that you can see. From a simple example that I often find, and I find it very hilarious when I deal with my students. So they'll miss an exam, they'll miss a class, and they'll come saying, no, I was so stressed and I had studied so hard that I slept through the timing of the exam. That's a very standard thing. They come, and it always is largely their perspective that they were so clued into this exam that their body or their physiology responded to actually de-stress themselves and they missed the exam. Now, from a teacher's perspective, it's totally different. It's very annoying. You could give a retest, and it typically looks like as if it's someone who's highly irresponsible, right? A student who's not attending a final exam demonstrates, from a teacher's perspective, a high degree of irresponsibility. But if you look at it from the student side, when he is saying things like, I was stressed, and it happened with me, I was saying something different, and the other side was saying something totally different. I mean, the conversation was really crazy at one time, a few years back. And then it struck me that there's something not making sense. He keeps saying that he was interested in the exam, he was very stressed, and he had studied very hard. If you have done all the preparation, how can you not put an alarm on your phone and attend the exam? It doesn't make sense. And I thought it was highly irresponsible, but he kept saying that, and I know the student was very sincere. That is when this thing struck me, that there's something amiss here in my reading of what is happening. And the other example, another interesting example that I saw was that the cross this was when backbenchers. Typically my understanding initially when I started teaching was students who are sitting at the back, for example, or who are not talking, or people who are not talking are the ones who are disinterested. Now that is the biggest learning that I had when I started my teaching over the years. Front benchers versus back benching versus middle benching. These are personality ways for students to deal with the classroom. It has nothing to do with the interest in the class or the teacher. Often not. It is their way of, so it's a very personality, self-driven as to whether you're a front bencher or a back bencher. It has nothing to do with me. Right? So these are some of the examples when I say that you realize that what you see depends on who or where you are. These pictures that you see on the screen are actually of the same event, same place. But on the first picture looks at you can easily see there's a river, there's water, and possibly a river because you see pine trees, etc., and there are hills. The second picture of the same place actually looks like you're in the Himalayas or one of those beautiful mountains. You would not even imagine there's a lake there. The third one actually gives a different, and the fourth one looks like a marsh. Right? You would not say it's a very, very thriving lake. You would say it's a marshy land with some bit of snow, some bit of hills. You would not attribute it to a lake, rather just a pond kind of a marshy place. So these four pictures, in that sense, give you an example of course, I found these very interesting. Also giving you an idea of what you see depends on who or where you are. So then the question is, so what is the problem then, right? What actually goes wrong? So I'm sure all of you would have figured this out to some extent, but still, I thought, let me just put this up front. The difference is of perception. Okay? And as I had correctly said, in these times, there's no right or wrong. There isn't, right? So the student, when he is telling me that he was so stressed and that he missed the exam, he's looking at it from one point is not wrong. And when I say that this is high level of irresponsibility and this is not correct, I'm also not wrong. Okay? So it's basically a matter of perception. So and somebody, I'm going to stop here now and I'm opening it. Can someone tell me what perception means? What is perception? Anyone?
It's an understanding of the situation.
Okay.
Thinking.
It's thinking. Okay. Right. Anything else? How do you see what perception is? Oh, someone's already. So anybody who can tell me what perception is? So
The way we
It's the way you
understand the
look at the
problem.
situation or a problem.
Sorry, understand
The way we understand the problem.
It is how we see the world around us.
Correct. So all of you are correct. It's basically how you see the world, you understand the situation. So in other words, what you're telling me is this. It is not an exact recording of the situation, right? It is your own interpretation of it. And that is what a leader has to understand. There is no right and wrong. There is no annoyance or anger at all in leadership. Because whatever is happening after a certain level of sincerity is actually just their unique interpretation of a situation versus mine, right? It is not perceptions. These are all perceptions and they are not facts. There's your own interpretation, right? And we end up hearing and looking at things what we expect to hear and look, right? People and this, I think, I'm sure you would have, we don't have time. I realize we've missed out a lot of time, but I'm sure this picture you would have seen, most of you. You can see actually, either you can see a young lady, right? Or you see an old woman. So, but it's very difficult to see both, right? And that is how this is a perfect example of perception. Of course, I'll just run through them. If we have time, then maybe we'll go through these. Just some of the things that actually govern why there's this different interpretation of the same situation, right? So there are two factors. There's of course the whole physical factor of it, like intensity. When people speak loudly, that you end up hearing that more than people who are not speaking, who are speaking softly. Similarly, people who are sitting in front, you end up looking at them more than people who are sitting at the back. And so somewhere a brighter light, a louder sound, a stronger smell, a more closer picture, all of these actually end up changing our perception. We don't even realize the importance of it. The fact that our eyes play such a strong role in what your own interpretation, including psychological your mental or interpretation of a situation. A lot of what your eyes see, you end up looking at it as extremely important, right? And the interesting part is that it can actually, when there's very bright light, when there's very loud sound, it can actually overcome thinking. So therefore also you see young people, when you're stressed out, you put very loud music and you wonder why this is happening. But actually this happens. And why is it that people like, especially younger people, like brighter lights or very loud music, loud sounds? A lot of it is basically they want to dull out their thinking, because it's a big de-stressors for a lot of people. So in that sense, there are these physical, and plus, of course, there are these the psychological part of our perceptions as well, right? Where we, one or two I have written here, the whole, the tendency to group stimuli together, right? Where we perceive a whole when it does not exist. 5, 6 people together, we'll think it's a team, but sometimes it's not. There's some people standing together. Sometimes you end up being a part of a group. Just because you're physically there, you may not actually belong to their ideologies and things like that. So those kind of things, the closure, continuity, you tend to see obvious patterns in relationships. So you will think all women, they will act similarly. If there's all men, they will behave similarly. You tend to, in that sense, continuously start building patterns and things like that. So our perception, of course, it's a whole class, different class, 1.5 hour class altogether. But I'm just putting some of these points here as to why it matters that we end up seeing things differently, but actually there are different perspectives, but neither of them are wrong. And that is one of the tools that a leader should definitely have, right? They should not only have the capability to go beyond the obvious, they should have the capability of zooming in and zooming out, looking at the situation in detail, and also have a larger perspective. You will also have to, as a leader, realize that there are multiple ways of thinking of looking at the situation. There's actually no right or wrong. Right? And if the person, if you judge the person to have a certain level of sincerity, then you have to move to understanding the other person's side. Right? Then, I mean, if there's insincerity, then it's different. I mean, as a leader, you also, I mean, as individuals, we also sort of have a look at who's more, we can kind of intuitively figure out. But after that, you have to then understand that multiple perspectives exist and they all correct. And your decisions have to be based on all those perspectives taken together as correct. The third, of course, the fourth tool, therefore, is being creative or out of the box. The world has talked about it a lot. I know there is a huge amount of literature on it. And as a lot of my students and a lot of people tell me that, I mean, it's all fine to talk about it, but how do you sort of think out of the box? Right? I can't. I remember once some person came and said, so I was taking an MDP actually, and this was for corporate client. And they said, this person came and said that I can't think out of the box. That's it. And I was like, okay. So then I said, and that then made me think that, yeah, you're right. Everybody is not an entrepreneur, a creative person, or has, who can actually see colors which don't exist and things like that, as people say. So then, therefore, what is that tool that will help me? Even if I'm not a very move towards a highly creative, innovative, and all of those things, I'm a very, in the box kind of a thinker, then how can I be a good leader? And that is when this particular slide actually came into my when this came into it, I have put it up front, this one, which is creative thinking versus critical thinking. So what I realized, the difference between people as I was, as I go on along, talking to people, trying to figure and, talking about saying, oh, be innovative and be creative, it's very easy to talk about it. But actually to be creative and innovative is a very different skill. Some people have innately that thing of being creative, or they can think out of the box. Some people can't, they are made differently, they think differently, they have developed and grown their own perspective or their own personality differently. So then what? Right? Then what do you do? So then this slide in that sense has helped me sort of crystallize what I think can work. The point is that critical thinking is what I need to focus on, right? If I am, as a leader, if I'm too interpretative, I analyze too much, I end up identifying and categorizing and classifying too much, or I do too much of assessments and evaluations, too much of judgment, too much of figuring out right, wrong, and always putting some kind of a logic to it, then if I need to be a leader in this current world, I need to sort of move towards looking at analogies and metaphors. If I start looking at alternate examples, a lot of clarity comes in that sense. You move towards critical thinking, yes, but the clarity of being creative and novel starts coming in then. You have to be more curious rather than more analytical as a leader. So you can have people who will help you analyze and categorize and classify, but as a leader, you need to be a little more curious. You need to have metaphors. So ask people, so can you give me an example there? For an alternate example, what can be the other thing to do? What can be the other way to look at it? And that is what actually, an idea generation, that is what actually can take you from critical thinking or being overly critical, analytical, or assessment oriented to be a little more open to reasoning, open to things, is idea generation and metaphors and analogies that you draw. Take from example. And of course, if you look at it in the middle of this slide, are some of the things that actually take place. You start becoming a more abstract, some bit of abstraction and simplification starts happening. Things started becoming a little more simple, a little more broader. In that sense, a better synthesis starts happening. So when your critical thinking actually opens up to saying, okay, give me examples, give me metaphors, analogies, and let's generate some ideas. I'm curious to know more about it. You actually start moving towards actually creative problem solving. And that is what this slide says, where you start elaborating and synthesizing, integrating in a much more effective way. Then, of course, is the last tool. Okay, so we have some time. Okay. Then comes the last tool, which is saying, don't be judgmental. Okay, so here, I know it's a very prescriptive kind of a thing to say, but the fact is, also while we have been going through all of these slides, the fact is that there's actually no intrinsic good or bad. Right? Other than, as a lot of philosophers have said, other than two things. One is your life. There's good and bad in life. In the sense, don't kill, right? You don't physically harm anybody. Those are basic life, evolutionary goods. Right? And bads in that sense, if you do it, it's bad, which is life. And the other is the socially. When I'm saying social, it is more again biology and evolutionary. I'm not talking social structures and culture and things like that. I'm just saying to lie, to cheat, and all of these actually they harm the social fabric. So there are some of these things which are intrinsically not meant to be done, or intrinsically meant to be done or not done. Like lie and cheat and things like the social, because if everybody, the point is that in the social setup, and the reason why the philosophers say this is because they say that if everybody starts to lie and cheat, then you can imagine socially what will happen. Similarly, they say about life, physical, the physical and evolutionary, where they say don't kill, don't harm. And the reason they say is because then if species disappear, or species go away, then obviously the concept of life will disappear. So beyond that, actually there is no black or white. Everything is somewhere in the middle, where either a different perspective or a different understanding or a different just take on life exists. And so in that sense, therefore, our last Mm. Mm. And my last tool that I wanted to talk about, saying that you should not pass value judgment on things, where we should not sort of say that this is good, this is bad, this person is good, bad, more valuable, less valuable. Actually, as leaders, as you rise, move higher, and as you are moving towards a process of leadership as well, taking up leadership roles, you would realize that actually, even individuals, each individual will have something good and something bad. As a leader, you have to sort of see what is the good in that person and take it with you and leave the bad behind. Whatever you feel is not acceptable to you, you have to leave it behind. You don't leave behind individuals, right? That is what I'm saying. Don't be judgmental. Don't leave behind individuals. Leave behind or take with you qualities of that person, that particular quality that they have, and that is what you need to use as a leader. So here I'll stop now, and I will stop sharing. I want to take questions. I think we've had too much of slide. I'm stopping sharing right now, and I would like to take questions.
Hello?
Yes.
Ma'am, this is not a question, it's only a comment.
Okay.
I'm very impressed by your talk. You actually demonstrated leadership in your talk when the slides were not visible and everything went upset in spite of your hard work. I was just staring at your face to see what changes are going to happen, you know. But you took complete control of the situation, not blaming anybody.
Okay.
And back in shape, you know, perfectly poised and controlled, and you presented really well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It did kind of rattle me a bit, but you're right. Thank you so much for your compliment.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Dear participants, any more questions? You can directly interact with Madam.
So my question to everybody, so you agree with whatever I have said. I've happily said something and you have accepted it as well. Don't you want to challenge saying that, no, it doesn't make sense, or there are more dimensions to it which I have missed?
Yes, ma'am. Your presentation itself was self-explanatory.
Is there nothing that you want to challenge there?
Hello.
Yes.
Ma'am, this is Professor Virana here. Yeah, just to
Yes.
add to something, usually whenever we talk about the leadership and the excellence, most of the time it is the situation demanding and dynamic in nature. We can't take it as a one constant point and these are the rules or these are the points or these are the characteristics. It goes with the dynamism and the situation and the perspective, what is said, all those things. But moreover, it depends upon the situation, how we react and how we respond. That is also more important, I think.
Actually, what you said is very correct, very right. Things are so dynamic and there's no right and wrong. So how the leader responds makes a lot of difference. You're very correct. That's very right. And in fact, I've realized, I don't know, I mean, this is one example of when people strike, you know, when, of course, now we don't have so many strikes where employees take a stand when they stop work. But earlier when there used to be, so basically when people who started analyzing why there used to be so many strikes at one time, it was basically this, what you are talking about. The fact that people did not feel, the leadership's reaction actually would always make people react to strikes. When the leadership started changing their orientation towards how they take employees' complaints, the strikes have also reduced. I'm talking in terms of private sector only. Public sector, of course, has a lot of legal implications there. But in the private sector, where it is more like more informal, a lot of the reason why it has happened is because the management has geared up to respond differently. You're very right. What you're saying, Mr. Virana, is correct.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, so there's one question saying about from Meena Sundari. She's saying, ma'am, how to handle last benchers? Even though we maintain patience, sometimes they annoy us. I totally can understand because I've gone through that particular thing. But over the time, as I said, I was saying that what I have realized is that the last benching is as I said, people, when students sit on the last bench versus in the middle versus there, it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. And it basically, they are doing it because that is their comfort zone. And you'll be surprised, it's not that they are not listening. So they'll be talking to each other. That is the interesting part I've seen. People who are children who are sitting at the back will keep talking to each other. But sometimes they have been my biggest asset in class. The reason is I leave them alone. I just let them be. I just let them be. And if you let them be, this is my experience. I don't know what, I'm sure I'll be happy if other people also share their experience. But if you leave them and concentrate on the front and the middle, after some time, I mean, you have to do it consciously and not as a strategy where you don't ignore them completely for the entire set of number of classes, but in the initial period, right? After that, they will come back. So these are also children who are looking for attention. To tell you honestly, people who are sitting at the back are the ones who are not sure whether they will get attention, right? And when they talk to each other, it is basically getting your attention. There's a demonstration of also trying to get your attention. So if you play as a strategy, total ignoring, and then kind of giving them attention, you see if their behavior changes. Just give it a try and see if their behavior changes. I don't know, does that answer your question? This was so Meenakshi Sundari, she had asked. Meena Sundari, sorry. Okay. So there's another question that has come from Asha, which says, ma'am, while taking decisions, should we accept suggestions and openness from others? Because as we take opinions, it also leads to confusion and dilemma. So as a leader, you have to. I don't think you can afford to not take opinions of the others. And you have to take it. I don't know if it helps, but different people take different strategies. The biggest problem comes when you are taking someone's suggestion and analyzing the suggestion at the same time. The idea is to, as a leader, is to split that. When you're taking suggestions, it only has to be at that level where you're taking a diary and you're noting it down. The confusion comes in when you start analyzing those decisions at the same time. So there are multiple thoughts coming in and you have started already activating them in your head. Don't do that. That is where the confusion and the dilemma comes. When you're taking suggestions, you just do that exercise and note it down in your diary. You keep noting it down, right? And you analyze them later. Then that is when the confusion does not come. This is something that I wish I had that video, I could search for it. But this is some of the very interesting tool that one of the senior leaders, he is no longer in the corporate world now, I think, but he had he had suggested, and it really works. He had said that separate out, when you're taking suggestions, just separate the suggestions out from actual analysis. That analyzing you do later. That will ensure you don't have confusion, you don't have dilemma, even if it means that you will respond to those suggestions after 10 minutes. Right? So even if you're doing it after 10 minutes, you take all the suggestions and you note it down. You take 2 minutes to read through them, and then you can take a call maybe after 10 minutes or sometime later. But the crux is not to analyze it at the same time. I hope that helps. So that's another question that has come. What is the role of gut feeling in decision making? So people who go by their gut feel are a certain kind of personality, and people who go by what the situation is, what they see around them, are a different kind of personality. So it is very, very personality driven, whether you go by gut feel or you don't, or you look at facts and figures. So it's a personality trait actually. And so in that sense, both have an equal role. Some people will have the capacity to do a gut feel analysis. Some people will not go by the gut feel. Both are fine. Both are actually fine. Right? It's a very personality-driven thing, this gut feel thing. Yeah, Lavanya has written that even I leave them, and sometimes I involve them in my discussion. Correct, correct. So Lavanya, this is exactly what I've realized works for me also, especially undergraduates, when they are, 100 of them and they are 18, 19, 20, that age, they're extremely, extremely, difficult to handle. But yeah, that works. That's a very good suggestion that you've written. So there's another thing that has come in, question that has come in saying, ma'am, please throw more light on zoom in and zoom out. So, okay, just to reiterate again, what is zoom in and zoom out? Basically, the concept says that all of us are geared towards one particular orientation. Either we end up looking at any problem or a situation too much in detail. And when we start looking at it, go into it too much of detail, we end up personalizing it. We become more, it looks like a personal criticism, it looks like a personal situation. And we start looking at solutions also from the personal angle. And that is the zoom in. And there are some people who have a very zoom out perspective who are not able to look at the details of what the individual is going through or the individual suggestions, but have this capacity to draw larger visions, programs, plans, and then somebody else, and then the sort of actions, etc., are driven by somebody else. So this zoom in and zoom out is basically our own way of looking at a situation. And what the professor said was that you need to do both. While if you have a perspective of looking at very individualized, personalized kind of things where everything starts looking at as a personal criticism or very personal driven, then you need to ask the right questions so that you have a larger perspective of is it really me? Is it really trying to harm me, or it is a general environment that is like that, and things like that. So that is what she is saying. I'll send you the link so that you can have a little more, go through what the professor is saying, and that will give you a little more clarity. So then there's another question that has come. Some union leaders have nuisance value. They're not right also. How to handle them? So, Vidhu, what I have realized, so I was, by the way, for a long time, I was working in the corporate, as a consultant, and I was handling the trade union issues. I was long time back, and it was another world, frankly. I just got out of my college, and I had actually joined the corporate world. And there, I was working with the consultants whose leader, for some strange reason, was the trade union, had handled trade unions. So he used to get a lot of these assignments of figuring out trade union things. So in that, what I had realized is that why do people strike or do these representations? And two things is what I realized at the time, and I had seen him handle as well. One was you do trade, you strike, and you do all of this when you are not when you have uncertainty of how the other person will respond, right? When you are not sure how the other person in front of you will do it is when you become belligerent, you start creating nuisance. In general, also, if you'll see people who are children when they get annoyed, individuals when they start creating a nuisance, is basically because on two things. One is because they feel they're not getting heard. They need to be heard in the sense you have to systematically hear them out, actually not talk and let the other person speak. And secondly, they're not sure if they will get heard. Right? When they're not sure that the other person will value what they are saying or has any consideration for them. So this person, I won't take his name, that he used to tackle these two things. He used to, first of all, give them a long hearing. He would not speak, he would give them hearing, listen to all their perspective, hours, 5 hours, 6 hours we used to sit through. And the union leader would keep, and the people would keep talking. I would take notes. That was my job as a junior person. I would just keep, he said, take notes, take notes. He would tell me, okay, write this, write that. And he would just hear them out. The other thing he would often do was give them reassurance that you are valued, you matter. Of course, it's not as simple as that. There was this whole set of, but he used to work it as a strategy to tire them out, to tell you honestly. He used to tire them out 5 hours one day, 5 hours second day, 5 hours the third day. He used to tire them out, but also give them space to listen. And beyond a point, the whole thing used to then become very, very unemotional. So his point was, help them remove the emotion out of the actual content. Once that happens, then you find a solution. That is how it was. So I don't know whether Vidhu, I'm able to answer your question, but this is what I had seen one of my very senior people when I was working with him. This is what he used to do. He used to ensure that he used to give them a hearing, remove all their emotions, tire them out, to get their emotions out of the situation, and then sit with what the issue was and start dealing with it thereon. So, is there anything else that...
Madam, there is one last question in the chat box. Is it decision making and choice making are different from each other?
So you are basically talking of personal versus professional difference. I don't know how to sort of put it up front, how to sort of explain it, but decision making basically is a professional, it's something that you do because you're sitting in a seat, you're sitting in a position. That is when you take. Choice is your own personal thing. You can't let choice come into your decision making. Your choice, as I said, is a personal preference, and they are different. So I may, for example, I may love coffee a lot. So that's my personal choice. That's my choice making. But if I'm sitting with a lot of people who love tea, then I have to order tea. Right? It's as simple as that. So decision making is when you look at the situation and do the optimal. Choice making is when you take a personal call, right? And you can do that also. In a situation, I can say to push my power and leadership position, I will say, no, we're going to have coffee. But that decision has to be basically to prove a point or to put a point across, and not because it's my personal choice. Right? That is the difference between decision making and choice making.
Thank you, madam.
So somebody has said, I think choice making itself is decision making. Definitely, it is decision making. But people typically distinguish between the two, saying that it is a decision, but maybe at the personal level, and the other one is more at the professional level. So both, therefore, have a different emotion or different action and consequence attached to it. That is the difference. Yeah, Yogesh has very correctly said, choice is personal, decision may include others. Correct. Very clever. Yeah.
Thank you, madam. Thanks for your insightful session on leadership presence and decision making. And thanks to all the participants also, because you made it very interactive. And though we had little tricky moments in between, that's okay. It happens because on the online mode, these are some inevitable problems we are encountering from day one.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for your cooperation, participants, and I'm really thankful to Angela madam for accepting my invitation on behalf of my institution, Government Polytechnic Rathunelli, and on behalf of all the participants and my colleagues. I extend a sincere thanks to you. And dear participants, I want to inform you that tomorrow we have one more session from Professor Angela madam on women in leadership, and I hope that session will be much more enlightening. And thanks for your participation, madam. Thankful to you. Thank you very much once again.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure talking to you, and my apologies that I had tried it out with my students and with sitting in different rooms, and it had worked, but somehow it didn't work in this context. So my apologies there. I'll definitely send the link. And yes, I'll be meeting everyone tomorrow again.
Yeah, thank you so much, madam. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Dear participants, have an announcement for you. Have a nice lunch and please come back again at 2:30. Sure. Thank you, one and all.